Magic here. All right. Good afternoon, gamers, and welcome to episode 33 of Games with Dave. Today I have the pleasure of being joined by designer and author James Pozenel from Horseshark Games. James, why don't we kick this off with you telling folks a bit more about yourself?
Oh, okay, sure. So this is always the you never know where to start. Um, I have been writing in the DC. I actually started writing game stuff because of DCC about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, wait, 7 years ago, something like that. And and so I started with my big first work was Angels, Daemons, and Beings Between Volume 2, which was released on Shinobi 27 Games. It's all elf kind of centered patrons. And then I just guess I haven't stopped since. Released my first adventure on the Horseshark, uh, whatever this hobby, my hobby imprint, or whatever you want to call it. House of the Red Doors. That was like 2020, I think. There was a Kickstarter for that too. And now I'm a freelance writer for Goodman Games. Recently wrote um, Under the Salvage Pits, which appears in the latest printing of the MCC core rulebook, and also had the tremendous fortune to get asked to contribute to the Dying Earth, the Kickstarter box. So I've got several works in that piece as well, and more coming. So it's not stopping. Like I said, it's not stopping. I'm writing all the time.
That's
That's me.
awesome, though. I'm glad you've got that to do, and it's got to be so much fun doing it. So, what was it initially that drew you in with
Mm,
DCC?
yeah. Uh, I think ultimately it is the core rulebook itself. It's just this, um, you know, the amount of rules, right, for the game are pretty small compared to like the rest of the book. If you were to kind of like, I mean, if you look at the quick start rules, it's a good kind of a way to consider how much the rule book really is. So the quick start's like, I don't know, 40 pages or something
Yeah.
like that. I can't remember. Um, but that's the game. And then the genius really of the whole book is that good, Joseph just gives you all these ways to do rulings at the table, right? You want to talk about what are the rules for drowning? They're not there in the rule book, right? Like as a section of the rules, but you look at like the water elemental and how it does drowning, and then you go, oh shoot, I can just use that anytime I need to do drowning or not, right? It's not specified. There's no rules about how you do a mechanic. So there's a lot of freedom like in the presentation of the game, but there's a lot of like just support internally to it to like help you do the rulings. And that's what really drew me in, is like, here I have this really open kind of system that is highly supported internally, and then you just add in all the awesome bells and whistles that everybody talks about, like mighty deeds and spell checks and patrons and spell dueling and all this other stuff that a lot of games just don't have. Most games don't have. It's all, new. And so when I read that, I was like searching for a new game to play. I was playing 3.5, and I was really tired of armorer versus weaponsmith gaming, which is kind of what I kind of consider it. The characters are making their mini game of their characters, and then I don't know, that I guess the DM is doing their mini game of writing an adventure, because that has a whole bunch of like layers and rules and challenge ratings and all the other stuff. And then they meet, right, and then they see who did better, and then that was it got boring
Yeah.
as a way, and convoluted and time consuming to play like that. And so DCC was this just real breath of fresh air of, super open. The community is super, writes a lot. Um, the whole thing is playful. I won't say gonzo. I don't subscribe. It doesn't have to be gonzo. It's just, it's easy to play at the table and it's playful at the table. I think that's why it's a really great game.
It really is.
That's why I started writing.
Now, did you come in first? You came in first as a player and then began writing.
Kinda. I mean, I didn't get to play a lot. One of these guys that, a little bit of forever GM. If I want to play it, sometimes I have to run it. But I did play a little bit, but it was enough. Right? Just reading the book was enough for me to like start writing. And like my kids were younger, 7, 8, 10 years old, and so we played at home. And then they were like, I want this thing. And there's of course no rules for that. Nobody's done that before. And so it was just this opportunity to start writing for my kids. And then I was like, wait, I've done 2 of these things, like patron write-ups. I should just keep going. I've got lots of other ideas.
That's really cool that it kind of started out as a thing for your kids. I wish I could get my kids into playing games. My oldest played for a while and then was just like, eh. And my youngest now is starting to get into it, and I will get her. I'll get her hooked.
Good luck. I like both my kids have moved on from it. Sometimes they'll play, but almost never, which is sad.
It is. um, so one thing you kind of briefly mentioned that I'd like to touch on back on is how awesome the community really is for DCC. Like there aren't many others out there like it.
Yeah, it's definitely special. In that you can just kind of come in and say, I have an idea, and people are like, well, just go for it. And you're gonna get support, really. I mean, that's the difference. I think in some respects, like D&D has a community, right? Many perhaps has its own DM's Guild website, right? And your people are publishing just like we are. I don't know what it's like to be a publisher in that space, but I suspect it's there's a lot of noise to kind of cut through to get people's attention, and I don't think that's necessarily the case in DCC. Like, you put something out and it says DCC on it, you're gonna have some customers. You're gonna have a built-in fan base that's gonna come in and support you, which is I think puts it on a different level.
Yeah, and I think that the players and judges alike are on the hunt for new stuff more so than other communities. And I don't know how to really explain it, but it's like something new pops up, people jump right at it, and they ring that bell loud of like, hey, come check this out.
Yes.
And it's that support you're talking about.
Right. I think, Hasbro and Wizard of the Coast, they're trying to sell books, right? So they feed a schedule, right, of books, and that's what people want to play. They want to play like the stuff from the company. They don't really want to play stuff that is not from the company. There's like a corporate buy-in for D&D. And
I would agree.
There isn't for DCC. Or, of course, anything that Goodman Games puts out, people are going to be all over in greater numbers. But if you put your own stuff out, people will be there. People will support.
Yep, that is true. Geez, I hate saying that word. Another thing I saw that you recently did was the Game Designer Expo that the Ann Arbor District Libraries put on. What was that all about, and how was it?
It was a lot of fun. It was really busy. I think nobody expected it to be as busy as it was. So it was like 11 in the morning till 5. So it's like 6 hours, and you just never really got much of a minute to like get up and mess around with your display. Like you might have a chance to do at a regular con. Like, I don't table at cons anyway. but I know like vendors will kind of get up on a regular basis because there's like times they're slower than others or whatever, and they'll go out and kind of rearrange their stuff or that kind of stuff. So it was like constantly busy. Like the public was there from 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 11 to 5
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
engaged with you. So from that standpoint, to just um, meet people, talk about your game, talk to other vendors about their game, vice versa. That was great. The library, the city library, had started to really engage with role playing games right the year before the pandemic, and they had Don Stroud and a few others come out. I didn't participate at this time. I think it was 2018 or 19, and that you would sit down and play with somebody for an hour, and then you could go to another table and play for an hour, and there's like 3 or 4 tables or something like that, and Don was running something, and so he kind of tipped me off about it as well, and they were going to do it again during the pandemic or right before the pandemic. They were scheduled to come and play for, I don't know, it's like a 6-hour stretch or something like that, same concept, and they canceled it, right, because everyone has to stay at home. And but they kind of kept the things percolating, right, behind the scenes, as far as the library and its engagement with game design and role-playing games and that kind of stuff. And so I don't know, finally everything's thawed, we can kind of see each other, and they put a big show together. So I expect them to keep doing it next year. So local-ish, Michigan-ish people should be on the lookout. I think last year they put out applications like in in early winter, something like that. So November, December, uh, January, some window of time to apply to come and table at the event. So anybody who's nearby and wants to hang out at the next year's, they should be keeping track of aadl.org and looking out for the announcements if they want to come. But it was a lot of fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
I met the guys from Palladium, like Riffs, those dudes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were there.
Nice.
And also like Call of Cthulhu, Chaosium is headquartered here in Ann Arbor. So Rick Mentz was out at the event talking for an hour, did some presentation. I couldn't watch it because I was tabling, but they try to get some locals, bigger people
That's really cool.
come. Yeah,
I wish, hopefully, I'm gonna have to see if we can get something going like that around here. I don't know that Maine really has as big of a game design community to support it, but you don't know until you try.
that's true. Yeah, it was really surprising to see like I won't say government, like quasi government, a public institution, kind of throwing down in this area.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's so neat about it, is the fact the library is like, yeah, we should support game designers.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It sounds fun. And another one you also hit that I saw that I'm very envious of was GaryCon.
Oh man,
How was that? I mean, that had to
that's
have been just intense.
it is. It's a slog. Like you don't want to stop going to games. Is kind of like it's an endurance test of the highest order. Um, from playing in or running in the morning until like off the books late at night. That's what you're doing, and you're getting to see like a lot of people who I think like Gen Con is mentally busier. You're running around doing more stuff, or people have tighter schedules, perhaps. I don't know, but there's like lots of people who are running stuff. So I got to play with Stephen Newton in his Tomb of the Savage Kings, and that was cool.
Nice.
And then there was some play testing for Gen Con tournament. That's exciting. So that was a late night, up till I can't remember 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that.
Wow.
Playing with Mark Bruner and Julian Bernick and Tim Duchesne and amongst others, the Sketches. It was like a star-studded table.
Nice. That sounds
But
really fun.
it was fun. Terry Olson was there, and he's writing it too. So
Now, were you just running games, or were you doing a combo of running and playing?
yeah, I ran a couple and played in a couple, so I kind of balanced it.
Nice.
Ran Cats of Rahtlu because that's kind of new, and then ran the initiative I started last year, um, um, Gash Across the Multiverse, with Trevor Stamper and Chris. Why is it? Christopher Ricks? Yes, that's right, Christopher Ricks, from Two Old Guys Game. Does all the Iron Maiden type adventures or whatever.
Oh,
So
nice. Those are
yeah,
cool. I've seen
yeah.
those.
So we had like 3 tables, 6 players, 5 or 6 players a table, and we just rotated the players for like for through 3 different games, 3 different scenarios in
Wow.
our worlds.
That sounds fun and tiring at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that we kind of build some slop into it. Like it's 3 hours of timed adventure. So there's an extra hour. I
Hmm.
don't know. I think it's harder on the players because they have to basically learn 3 sets of characters. The same stats, but different classes. They get like a different class every place they go.
Gotcha.
They're not a warrior. They might be a warrior at one table, and then they're a troll or something like that at Trevor's table, and then they come to my table, and I'm running like my net crawl game that I'm developing, and so they're like a war driver, which is kind of like a warrior, but not exactly. So everything kind of changes up. They have to learn a new class at the table.
Oh, interesting. So
Yeah.
you spoke of running Cats of Rahtlu at
Yes.
Gary Con. How cool and how special was it to develop a game with your daughter?
It was a lot of fun because I think I was like I keep on kind of like joking around about that the song about from Husker Du. It's a funny song about this cat fur farm. It's basically what this. It's a cat fur farm. So they take the you feed the rats to the cats and the cats to the rats, and you get the cat skins for nothing. That's like the whole premise of the song. And so and it's this guy kind of like there's music's playing, it's kind of goofy music, and then this guy's like blathering on about this cat fur farm, and I would like sing parts of it to her, and she's like, "Dad, you should just do an adventure about this." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And then I don't know how it came up, but somehow Lovecraftian themes got grafted in here, and then it kind of all came together.
It is fantastic because, like I told you before we went on, and I first saw that on Kickstarter, I'm like, Cats of, oh, wait a minute. And then it clicked in my head what was going on there. And I'm like,
Yeah.
back this.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, like in the grandest tradition of the game, right? Like reversing the name of a thing, right? And kind of playing with it in your own space, I thought was important. Would be a fun thing to do, I guess. So I wanted to do Lovecraft stuff. I needed cats, right? What other story than the Cats of Ulthar should you be referencing? Where you can't kill cats, and so let's play around with that idea a little bit, and maybe the cats are the bad guys, and somehow they've pulled the wool over the eyes of the citizens, and so what's the story, right? And that's kind of where that's a bit of the undercurrent synopsis of what's going on in that adventure.
Yeah, it's a fun little thing. I don't want to give anything away.
I'm
So
trying not to either,
yeah.
but I have had people like be like disturbed that the cats were that they were had to fight cats. They wanted cats to be fluffy, lovey. I get to play a cat, right? I'm like, no, nobody's
No,
playing a
no, you don't.
nobody's playing a cat. The cats are going to attack you, and they're like, no. I'm like, come on, people. They have 2 sides.
Yeah, mine
There's
certainly does. Oh my God, let me.
exactly there's the cuddly, lovey one, and then there's the one that's like, I'm pissed off, and I'm going to make you're going to know about it.
There's the one too that lays on its back and is like, "Oh, here, rub my belly." And
Classic,
yeah,
classic.
yep. Um, man, and speaking of it, like Doug killed with this cover.
Yeah, it was
Like it
it was only
is,
about can I get him on the schedule? Can I get his schedule? Can I get in his schedule? That was the only consideration. That's it. It has to be Doug.
yeah. I couldn't agree. You made a great choice because this one cat right here on the cover basically says it all. Like, come play
Yes,
in our town.
yes, yes. I love the back too, and
Yeah,
I didn't put I couldn't put I I could not put anything over that art. The standing stones and the cultists and the fire and the cats, like that cat thing in the
and
clouds.
that
That was
looming cat. Yeah,
strokes of genius from Doug.
it really
Very
is.
cool.
And another cool thing that you had that I kind of get a little confused at, because I told you I can be a little slow up here at times, are
Ah,
the hex
yes,
tiles.
yes,
Um, Without giving away too much, because I feel like we could give away stuff about the game. Um, what can you tell folks about the hex tiles and how they're used without giving away too much?
yeah. So at one point in the adventure, they there's some catacombs, and I could draw like a map. I was like kind of considering what I was going to do in this section. Draw a map uh, of all these kind of catacombs, um, and test people like essentially like a maze, like from a play testing perspective, kind of test how this particular map plays out. And I didn't really want to do that. It was a bit of laziness. Uh, so I was like, well, what if it's like a hex crawl underground? You just roll a dice and then it tells you what's kind of in that hex. So you get like in the adventure, there's like a starter map. Some things are placed on it. Like those are the starting points, the entry points into the catacombs. And then from there, the blank ones, you roll the hex, you roll on a table to see what's in the hex. And I think that's worked out pretty good. And of course, when I was testing this, it was still, we weren't getting together in person that often, if at all, maybe privately, right? No cons were going on. And so it worked great because on a virtual tabletop, I could have the little hexes, I could roll the dice, and I could put them on the map, right, and show everybody in the virtual tabletop what's going on. I remember playing it last year at was it at UConn? Or was it 2 years ago at UConn? I can't remember. Must have been last year. And I have the book and I have the map, right? And I'm trying to do this at the table with this piece of paper and draw in like what's on the map. I was like, this sucks as an experience. It's hard to do at the table. Takes time at the table. Uh, and so I was just like, well, what if I had some like little hex tiles and I could just put them down as we go, right? Just clear a space on the table, say this is where you are, which direction you want to go. You've got the 6 cardinal directions of the hex, and then they just choose. And as they choose, I roll a dice and I put down the tie. So I got to play with it at GaryCon, and it was smooth. Just no big deal, right? To play it out that way. So that was why I wanted to give them to everybody in the Kickstarter, but we just didn't hit the numbers to make it happen. So I just kind of offered it to backers as an add-on. And so enough people said yes that I was able to order a bunch of them. And
Yeah, that's so much easier than trying to draw a map.
yeah,
And
yeah,
now I get it, because when I was looking at this the other day, I'm like, are those 4 points that you start with? Or, and I got a little confused. So now that I have that little bit of knowledge, that makes all the sense in the world to me.
yeah. It's hard to write down the instructions. You're like, I hope people get this.
Yeah. Um,
Anybody can email me and ask, okay?
yeah, or they can watch this and they'll have the perfect
There
instructions on how to.
exactly. I just showed them this video.
um, I was going to ask you to tell folks the basic premise of the game, but we already kind of did that.
Like Scooby-Doo and
Yeah,
cats. So there
Scooby-Doo
you
and
go.
cats. I like it.
Don't worry, it gets a little gruesome in places.
That's quite all right. It's was it that or no, I think it's the next thing coming up that I had one thing that I was just like, whoa, which was actually this, the House of the
The
Red
baby.
Doors. And this seems so cool. I'm kind of all over the place now at this point. The nerves are gone, the caffeine's kicking in, and
Amen.
um but with the House of the Seven or the House of the Red Doors, what inspired you to write a one player and one judge module?
Ah, it's a funny story in that, like, and I kind of like doing this as an approach to game design. If I hear about a thing, like a mechanic or like a way of a play style kind of thing, and I'll just kind of go off on my own tangent to fill in what that is. So there was a bunch of like what was it called? There was a tournament for a funnel tournament, and it was called like one on was it called a one-on-one tournament? Somebody was playing at Gary Con like several years ago, um, a one-on-one tournament, and I was just like, well, what does that even look like? Because I wasn't there, I didn't see it. There's photographs. There's like people like lined up on chairs waiting to play. Had no idea that it was just a competition in the sense of how far your zero level got through the adventure. It was Carnival of the Damned, which is a huge adventure, right?
Yep.
It's lots of areas to visit, and so the you basically I found out later that six people are sitting at the table. They all have a zero level peasant, and they're all playing Carnival of the Damned until they die, and then they have to get up and leave the table, and the next person comes and sits down. And so, like, however many rooms they got through, that's their score, and then whoever survived the longest or whatever was won the tournament. But I hear one-on-one tournament. I'm like, well, what's that even look like? What does a game like that look like? Um, and so I just kind of said, okay, well, I'll just make it up. And and so I was like, oh, okay, it's one-on-one. It's like you and me sitting down and playing an adventure. Probably because it's a tournament, I don't want it to take too long. Should be pretty brief. And if it's one-on-one, it can't be just all fighting. It's got to be like you got to do some thinking. Um, there's got to be like, and then since it's points, like performance inside these set pieces have to be kind of measured out, right? Like if you do this, you get that. If you do that, this other thing, you maybe there's minuses. So anyway, kind of develop these three zones in the adventure. Two of them are the same for everybody. The last ones kind of vary. And then I think I can't remember. I got somebody tipped me off to a symbology book, really thick, like art book, like this about symbology in art across cultures and in time and all this other stuff. A great book. I think it's just called Symbology. And so they're like talking about all the symbols that, and I wanted to have a kind of this puzzle that based on symbols. And also like Ultima 3 or no 4 starts with like an interview with like a gypsy, right? Like where they're choosing like compassion or prudence or all these kind of things, right? And it's
Yep.
kind of creating some sort of abacus of like what character class you're going to be in Ultima 4. And so I love that idea as the start of a game. So all those things kind of all came together, me mashing them until I have this kind of super symbol heavy adventure. The icing on the cake of all this is Tanith Lee's Death's Master. I love that book. It's got to be like the top 5 book for me. Um, and so like the characters, that the patron essentially of the House of the Red Doors is like kind of a pull through from Death's Master a little bit, and this idea that you can change your fate and that kind of stuff, and yeah, lots of thinking went into that adventure.
You can
Like
tell
lots of,
when you
yeah,
read it. And yeah, 3 rounds of puzzles with, I think it's 7 different outcomes, if I
that's
recall
right.
right. That's
Forgot
a
about
lot
the
of
last one.
potential outcomes.
I love the 7th one. That's always a good one.
um, I've got to say, Into the Dark is my favorite door. I don't want to spoil that for what lays behind it, but I was just like, this is twisted. I love this door.
I remember play testing it, and the guy went there, and I was like, "Is this too harsh?" He's like, "No, this is brilliant. This is good."
That would have been my answer as well. I've been like, no, this is perfect.
Yeah. So I was like, "Okay, then I'm sticking with it." I can't remember. Submitted something to Goodman Games, and when Michael Curtis, kind of does the development on the writing, and he's like, "This is harsh, but I like it." It's
That's
like,
right.
"You're dead." It's like kind of one of those things where it's like da da da, or "You're dead," and he's like, "This is harsh, but I like it. It's okay."
And speaking of that, that is another thing I love about DCC is that you're not a superhero,
Right.
and that like death could be around any corner for any character at any level.
Mistakes can be made, right?
Yes.
And it's a classic kind of part of the old school game, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can make a mistake and that can be the end, and there's no hand holding for that. Like two Mahors, right? Like that's
Oh
just
god,
like a
yeah, the old Tomb of
litany of
Horrors.
opportunities to make mistakes. It's an extreme, but like that idea is everywhere in the OSR.
Yeah, it really is.
I remember Michael would say something like, sometimes it's like save or lump it. Sometimes it sucks real hard.
Yep. So with the House of the Red Doors, I believe I had seen that you ran that as a tournament at Gen Con as well.
I did. So me, my dumb self, knowing that there's a one-on-one tournament somewhere, like, and now I'll run it at Gen Con with my kids who are like 11 and 9 or something like that. I can't remember how old they were back then. So Daddy's gonna go and do this for 4 hours. Over several days, because it was like a Thursday game, a Friday game, a Saturday game that I ran. And so yeah, you like get through, I think I said 6 people in 4 hours or something like that. I can't remember what I had. But yeah, it's just like every day is computate, you just add up the score sheets because there's a big score sheet in the back of the book and everything. And then whoever, did the best got like a module. It was Fayhard that I was handing out at the time.
Nice.
And then there was a champion who got a trophy and all the other stuff. So it was fun. It was fun to kind of come into as a third party and play tournament with Goodman Games, having their tournament right next door. I still want, I'd still love to see third party publishers run tournaments. I think it's a fun thing to do. Just raises some awareness for like the games you're making, and it's a lot of fun. You get to meet a lot of people, and I think what's special about House of the Red Doors is that as a judge, you're getting to watch somebody, problem solve without a net. Like it's just them trying to figure out this puzzle instead of like a group of people figuring out a puzzle, right?
Right.
Like where people can kind of like go, I'm gonna sit back, right? and there's going to be the 2 or 3 people that are going to jump up to solve the puzzle. This is like, no, there's no way out, right? Like you are the one who has to solve the puzzle.
That's fantastic because it must force so much creativity out of people
Yeah,
to be the singular being in that situation. Because, like you were saying, you always wind up with the person that hangs in the back that's kind of like, yeah, these guys will get the puzzle.
yeah.
And like you said, this way you're just like, nope, here you go, solve it or die.
Yeah,
So
it's fascinating to watch somebody, solve a puzzle. And it's not something you get to do a lot, like when you're judging, because you're kind of worrying about the whole table, right? But when you hand off the puzzle to them in House of the Red Doors, you get to kind of observe.
right, what's going, their inner workings going
Yeah,
at the, yeah.
yeah.
Yep. So speaking of the tournament and the trophy, I understand you made the trophy.
Yep. It gets crazier and crazier. You just in for a penny, in for a pound. All of a
That's
sudden
so
you're
cool
making a
that you did
trophy.
that, though. I
Yeah,
love
well, you
it.
have to have something, right? It's a tournament. There's a prize at the end. Yeah, I
I
just kind of like I had like one of those stickers, DCC tattoos or whatever.
Yep.
Put that on the door. Uh, Found a fairy door that looked great. That was red. Like that was an important component.
Nice.
And then kind of put together some sort of base and all that stuff. I was putting it together during Gen Con, like literally at my sister lives nearby. I was at her house, like spray painting this base and gluing everything together. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but I love that just speaks to the passion you've got for it, though, of some people would just be like, yeah, I'll figure it out. And you're like, I've got it figured out.
Lots of cycles went into that one. Yes.
So you've got another project that you've done that I know I'm going to butcher the name of at the beginning of here. And it's the Enchiridion of the Computarchs.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
I actually got it right.
You got it
Enchiridion.
right. It's right here.
I have been meaning to pick this up for a little bit now and just haven't gotten around to it. What can you tell folks about that?
When was this? 2 years ago? 2020. Yeah. So MCC came out like 2017, right? And fun Gamma World style game. Presented, brought in this concept of essentially programs and patron AIs, like stuff you might have, concepts that you would have seen like in Saberhagen's Empire of the East, even though they did like a book, cooking games, they did a book for that. But like that idea of like a computer entity in the world as kind of a patron, I do software stuff, systems design, APIs, microservices, that kind of junk. So it's like, close to my professional, wheelhouse, as it were. And I just there's only like there's just patron spells, patron AI spells for the shaman and nothing else. And Jim, says, go ahead and just leverage DCC spells as programs. And that's cool. But something in me said, like, that's not enough, right? Like there's got to be corruption as a thing, but what is corruption in the context of programs? What is it like to fail at a program? There's misfire and there's patron taint and those other things in the spells. But what's it like to like mess up a program, to have bugs and faults and those kinds of concepts? And so, like I said, it just wasn't enough for me. It didn't hit the right box for me in the design, which is okay. Like it doesn't have to, right? It can be as is. MCC can be just as is. But for me, it was like, I've got to have programs and I've got to have everything kind of translated out into the style of computer stuff. And so that's what I did. Took a bunch of spells, basically the spells from DCC, and converted them over, and then said to Joseph, this is the thing I want to do, and to be honest, it's your work, right? These are your spells that I'm just kind of putting window dressing on. There's some new ones in there, but not a ton. And he's like, that's fine, this is great, go for it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool to have both Jim and Joseph being like, yeah, just go with it, man.
Yeah. And then of course I'm still, I've been writing patrons for years and years, so like to do patron AIs was just another natural jump too. And there's none in Kyridian, but then I put out some books afterwards. The big plan was it was going to be a huge book, a couple hundred pages, patrons, spells, or programs, and a bunch of other stuff. But I kind of like made it a little smaller because it was the start of the pandemic, and I didn't even know if we were like in apocalyptic times.
Yeah.
Or like, is there all the wheels going to fall off? No one's going to buy anything. What's going to happen? I don't even know. So just kind of like, well, I've got this all done. I'm just going to do that and push that out and on a Kickstarter and see what happens. And really, there hasn't been too much of a hiccup, right? Like we're all gaming, we're all playing, we're all, able to. We've made it through the other side of all this. So
yeah.
But back then, I just didn't even know.
No, I don't think any of us did. So it was just like, what the heck's going on here? You know?
Just kind of pulled it back to something manageable, and that's where I went with it. But it's kind of like a bedrock now of, at the time, I wasn't thinking about a setting. I wasn't thinking about a game behind this. It was just support solely for any of the kind of compatible systems to do programs in the spell chart table kind of way, right? It could be Starcrawl, it could be Terra Stratus Fiends, it could be Crawl Jammer, it could be anything, right? Like it's just a computer veneer over spells to like support techno type games, Cyber Sprawl Classics, all those games. Just like here, it's just something you can add into those games, and you don't have to do all the work. And then John Wilson was asking me like, "Is this a setting?" And I was like, "Oh, no, it's not a setting." And then he put something in my head at that point. Is this a setting?
It's like when you heard one-on-one game, you're like, "Oh, is this?"
Yes, absolutely. You hear it, and then somehow it's manifested, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. So he's like, "Is it a setting?" I was like, "No, absolutely not. It's just some spells, just some programs. Forget about it." And I was like, "Wait, is it a setting?" And so that's where I'm. It's been about a year and a half on Patreon, developing a strictly inside the computer setting for basically pretty compatible with DCC, but also aiming really at other games outside of DCC as well, like Mothership, or even Cyberpunk Red, or any kind of game where there's computers involved. And there isn't really there isn't a fantastic way to do adventuring inside of a computer. That's what it really boils down to. Cyber dungeons, cyber characters, getting information out of computer systems.
That sounds pretty fun to me. So what can you tell me about your Patreon now that you brought that up? That was going to be one of my things down the road.
Yeah. There's a real I don't know, there's like an internal struggle for me to do a Patreon, because I don't really like the idea of hanging a shingle and saying, "Here, pay me some money and I'm going to write some stuff and you can see it." Like pay to see writing, and it feels totally wrong. But on the other hand, it's helped like put a schedule on things. Like I have to produce content,
Right.
So it's really helpful in a way of giving some sort of structure or regimen to developing content for it. And on top of that, um, it, the money that comes in just helps to like kind of fund art along the way. And then getting back to this concept of you're paying me to write stuff, and I don't really like that, is I'll give physical stuff out to the patrons. So
Oh, cool.
after a few months, I'll send them an ash can of the book that I put out around Gen Con last year. And so that's like 60 pages of content, really tied close to DCC. So it's very compatible with DCC, and classes, equipment, some rules about creating adventures like on the fly, and then a bestiary. And so you've got like a kind of a small game, and I'll just mail you a copy of that, after a few months of support. So just ways to like physically, also, have a physical component to it. It's not all just the writing. It's maybe like the writing's a bonus at that point.
Gotcha. That sounds really cool, though. I might have to sign up so I can get the game and support you. So
That'd be cool.
are there different tiers, or is there just like a singular tier, or?
There's now 3 tiers. There's just for $1 a month, I'll give you like the content, just all the posts, all the content, all the game mechanics, all the classes, everything. That's $1 a month. For 3, I write a developer diary every month about the article I just posted, the mechanics I just posted. So there's like some insight into choices I made or influences, or where that came from, or other kind of chit chat alongside. So like internal, things I'm thinking about as I go along. And then I just put another one out there for 5, which is just basically you have a lot more access to me, which sounds dumb. But like there's a Discord now. I mean, like it's all turning into something, way bigger than I would ever think I should be doing. But like the $5 is like kind of like, if you got ideas, like let's talk about your ideas. If you got requests, I will, entertain requests, all sorts of stuff. So just a way to kind of have a different level of access, like more of a one-on-one kind of access if you want it. Some people will just support at that level, just to support at that level, right? They're not really, interested in talking. Most people don't. That's another weird part about Patreon. You put out stuff, you get a like or two. There's not a lot of people on there anyway, like 16 people currently supporting. So I don't expect a lot of social back and forth there, but in theory it could happen.
One of these days, you never know. It could just be the right thing that you put out, and it takes right off.
The thing that I wouldn't even be doing this if I could find a system that had already done it, like the kind of like the Tron Matrix, whatever idea. If there was a system out there doing it, I probably wouldn't even be working at it, right? But as I looked around and keep looking around, I don't find anybody doing this kind of thing.
No, it sounds really, really, really cool. And you said it ties back into ComputeArts, correct?
Yeah.
So that's even better.
Yeah, it's like, here's this thing I've made, and I don't want to leave it behind per se. So like even this game, Netcrawl, that I'm working on, it's like the concepts of a program table and rolling on a program table, it still is incorporated. So there's a lot of those mechanics, those die 20 DCC mechanics that stay in the game, even though your home system might have been Mothership, right? You might be on a derelict computer and having, on a derelict ship and having to, dive into a computer to get information and, deal with ice and firewalls in a monster versus kind of character kind of way, versus skill checking to get all that stuff done.
That sounds really neat. I've got this vision of like a lock system and you're just rolling, success, failure at the like that last tumbler, and it's like
Yeah, I think the thing that I want the most is computers are kind of like this place where anything goes, and it's not leveraged as a world very often in
no,
games. And that's what I want, is like, here's this other component of world building that you can kind of graft into a game, and you can have like an adventure inside the computer, as opposed to adventure inside, in your, your home system, in your meat space. There's it would be, I think it's compelling. Like, you get kind of a break from a system for a little bit. It's a way to kind of like tease, you drop your toe into something different for a little bit,
yeah,
and then you can still come back out and carry on in cyberpunk, right? Like, do those missions and do all that stuff. But here's a way to kind of have a narrative break from all that.
yeah. No, I get it. It sounds really neat. My thought that I just had went in this ear and out that one. So, so what is next in the pipeline for you that we'll see you launching for? I guess you'd say your next Kickstarter.
Ooh, I think Netcrawl is going to be the next big one. That said, I don't know how much I can talk about this.
Well, don't get yourself in trouble.
I won't get myself in trouble. Goodman Games approached a handful of third-party publishers to join him in a multiple creator Kickstarter. So they're doing, Goodman Games is doing something, and then he's invited like 5 other third-party publishers to also do something related to the main effort.
Gotcha. That
And
sounds pretty cool.
it is pretty cool. And so basically they set up kind of, we're all in it together at the same time, as it were. And this is a way to empty your wallet real good. Is that you're gonna, of course, like, everyone's gonna come to Goodman Games and go, yes, yes, yes. But then there's like these 5 other projects that are sitting alongside of it, all related to that project, to kind of fill in gaps, right? Like, here's our Goodman Games product, and here's these other things that are kind of supporting it. Yeah, so it's all adventures, I think, mainly. Some adventures, some kind of like hex crawly kind of encounter books and all this other kind of stuff for something that Goodman Games is doing. So I'm not going to say any more than that, but that came up on the radar maybe back in February, and so that's like thrown me into disarray, because I wasn't really planning to kickstart anything, to do a crowdfund this year. I was hoping to skip it, but now I'm back. We'll be doing another one. I think I think it's in the fall or something like that.
That's really got my brain going of what direction this could be going in. And
yeah, I can't say.
I know you can't say, and I'm just like,
I want to say, I want to spill the beans real bad.
Oh, now I'm just picturing Starship Troopers. Do you want to know more? Yes. Well, James, that was actually all I had today. Is there anything you feel like I left off that we didn't talk about that you'd like to hit on? I mean, I've got all afternoon, really.
All afternoon. But does anyone else? There's no questions. There's probably nobody.
No, we haven't had anyone. We've had one consistent viewer through the whole thing, and they haven't said anything.
Wow.
One of these days, I'm going to figure out how to get viewers. But
well, at least this is saved, right? Someone can
yeah,
buy.
Yeah. Once we actually go from being live, this will automatically post to YouTube, and then I'll have the archive of it as well.
And you said you weren't like technical. I beg to differ.
Well, I might be a little bit more than I let on, but all right. Well, if we don't have anything else, thanks for so much for joining me.
Yeah,
when this Goodman project does kick off, or I just lost it, Netcrawl. do kick off, I'd love to have you back on to talk about them. But I had a great time. I hope you had fun.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much
Awesome.
for
Thank you.
inviting me out.
And to our one silent viewer out there, thanks for joining us.
God
And
bless you,
anyone
sir.
that's watches this, oh, it's Neon Lord. He said it's me.
That's Brian.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today, Brian. But yeah, that is all I've got. And any parting words you want to tell folks where they can find you, how they can support you?
Yeah. There's the Patreon. So it's patreon.com lectrotext, LECTROTEXT. And then of course Goodman Games carries, everything I got. So, you can always go there to buy stuff. I guess I have a Facebook page where you can buy the stuff too. Drive through RPG. It's all there too.
Make sure I get links for everything in there. Brian says it was a blast listening to us. So
nice. Thanks for being here, Brian. Thanks for giving us at least some veneer of a television program.
All right. Well, James and Brian, thanks for joining me today. And folks, have a great time gaming out there. Be safe and stay out of trouble. Have a great afternoon.
Peace.